Okay, Psych 250 students, I want you to do something for me. I want you to draw me a house, a tree, and a person. They can all be on the same sheet of paper, but just three separate drawings. You can use pencil, ink, markers, whatever you want. A house, tree, and person. When you go to draw the person, make sure it's not a stick person. Sorry, no stick people are allowed. After you're done with your house, tree, person, draw a second person, the opposite gender of the first person that you drew. So hit this video on pause and then do your drawings and then come right back. Pause. Okay, hopefully you've done your drawings. Let's talk about house, tree, person. Here's a drawing that a student allowed me to show of their house, tree, person, a very normal house, a fruit-bearing tree, a little sun out there, person one, person two, right? Pretty normal, nothing too weird or pathological about that house, tree, person. Let me show you some different houses. Here's a house that was drawn with very little detail and it looks like a person's trapped inside, right? Here's a house with a lot of openings. Now that could point to somebody feeling trapped or somebody feeling like they have no privacy. It just depends. We saw a tree like this, but sometimes you'll see a tree like this. If it's close to the holidays, it doesn't really have that much significance unless they tell you there'll be no presents this year. That tells you something. Suppose you see a tree that looks like this, all dead. Find out what they're saying about their tree. The house tree person, of course, is a projective. We can learn a lot about their people because here's a person who's male, drew themselves first, and then drew the opposite gender second. Now, if a little boy drew this, you would probably figure that that person had some trouble with their mother. Or if a married man drew this, other issues. So you get a sense of a little bit about a person, hoping that they'll project their thoughts and feelings onto the drawings themselves. Take a look at your own drawings when you get a chance and do your own analysis. But check this out. I happened to be at an APA convention some years ago. Actually, it was 2014. And I met Giuseppe Constantino and his lovely wife. Now, I immediately knew who this was because I have the Giuseppe Constantino, who's the creator. I have a box full of his temas cards. Now, if you understand Spanish, temas means themes, right? But this is actually an acronym. It stands for Tell Me a Story. And so what Dr. Constantino decided to do is to create a series of cards and make them more culturally appropriate. For example, you remember the TAT cards I showed last time? A lot of folks said, well, those cards look kind of old-fashioned. They don't look like anybody like me. So he developed these cards for kids. And so he put different scenarios. And here you would show this to the kid and then hope that they would tell you about something that's going on. Again, what has happened, what is going on, what will happen, what is the feeling associated with the card. Now, they only started with a minority and Caucasian version. But by the time I met Dr. Constantino, he had told me that they advanced to a variety of different types of cultures, each one being cultural specific, thus getting a lot more richer detail by the practitioners using temas. He insisted that we take a picture together, so I thought that was a great idea since I am a photographer. And so we did. We took a picture. I promised to send him the picture. I took a picture of them. He took a picture with me. And I did. It took me a while, but I got to send this to Dr. Constantino with a little note, thanking him, telling him what a pleasure it was to meet him. And then I wrote a little letter to him with the picture enclosed, and here's my letterhead, and here's my letter to Dr. Constantino with the photo enclosed. And then I got the envelope back. As you can see, returned to sender. I thought, gosh, did I write down the right address? I mean, he did give me his cards, and so I thought, well, maybe I wrote down the wrong card or wrong address. And then I did some digging, and I found out that Dr. Constantino was featured in the APA, American Psychologist publication, and he had passed away. So it took me some while to mail the document to him with the photograph. I wish I had sent it to him immediately because we hit it off. He was such a terrific person. Giuseppe Constantino, creator of Demas. And it's a good lesson if you're thinking about contacting somebody, make sure you do it sooner than later because he never got a chance to see the picture. We shared the moment. Now, the other assessment I want to introduce you to is self-report inventories. And you know the difference from projectives because self-report inventories usually are a lot of questions. And one big example is the MMPI. Now, the MMPI is a mouthful. The Minnesota Multifaceted Personality Inventory. This is an older version. So I can read just a few questions from this older version. For example, there's 567 questions, I believe. You answer these true and false, and you bubble it in a little form. I like Mechanics magazine. Starts off pretty easy. Either true or false. You either like Mechanics magazine, you don't like Mechanics magazine. I have a good appetite. True or false. I've had very peculiar and strange experiences. True or false. Evil spirits possess me at times. True or false. So the questions kind of are simple and kind of complex. Even that last one I read, you might put true because you think, well, I'm pretty normal, but during the weekend I have a little bit of this and the spirits take over, right? Here's what the assessment might look like if you fill it out. And it's scored electronically now. But anything above or below these two lines are considered abnormal. So we look at the various characteristics. It takes a while to fill it out. I've gotten a lot of valuable information by using the MMPI, but it's not always as accurate as it could be because I've given it to younger people and they score sort of psychotic on the measurement because they're answering true to a lot of those evil spirits, but it's the way they interpret their questions. Sometimes they can skew the data. So you have to be careful. Any assessment, whether it's a projective or an objective assessment, you have to treat it with a shipload of salt. I'll put it that way. It is a valuable thing because this is a male result, but it can show if people are faking or perhaps bending the truth, so to speak. Now, why would anybody want to bend the truth on taking the MMPI? Well, sometimes people want to portray themselves as a little bit more mentally ill than what they are. Perhaps they're trying to avoid a prison sentence and rather be sentenced to a mental facility. Regardless of the situation, I've run into some very weird situations. I've had people refuse to fill it out. I said, okay, well, I'll just contact the judge who sent you here to get this filled out. I've had a person, again, there's all these 500 plus questions. I had a person, usually you give them the booklet and the form, and they start filling it out, and you go back and check on them, see if they have any questions or concerns. And so I waited about 20 minutes. I went and checked on the person who had the booklet. And I asked him, is there a problem? Because I noticed he was still on page 1. And then he told me that he couldn't read. So that's why he couldn't fill it out. So I had to alter the assessment. I read him the questions, and then he would tell me true or false, and I would bubble it in for him, which changes the dynamics. Remember, I talked about standardization? It's not exactly how it's usually given, but and of course, I tried not to react to any response he gave me if he said true to this or false to that, because I knew that could skew the data too. If he saw me react like, then he would say, oh, I better not answer like that anymore. You'll notice as you're taking the assessment, if you've ever taken one, and sometimes they give them in the workplace so they can see what the different personality styles or if there's a potential problems. Um, Sometimes the questions will be repeated, just a little bit different wording. So people are like, hey, didn't I answer that already? They want to see if you are consistent, right? So be consistent. I always tell people whenever you're going to be assessed, be as open and honest as possible. It's just like if you take your vehicle in to get repaired and you can't figure out what's wrong with it, you can't fix it yourself, and the mechanic says, what's the problem? And you say, I can't tell you. Well, if they have nothing to go on, it's going to make it very difficult for them to fix the issue. And I always say open and honesty with the assessment process. And ask lots of questions. Why is this assessment being given? How is it going to be used? I can't tell you the number of people I gave assessments to, and they just said, well, my lawyer told me to go here, but don't you know what the results are going to be used for? The results of these, including IQ tests and other variety of other tests, could be used to determine whether you get a job, lose your job, regain custody of your kids, lose custody of your kids, go in a mental institution, go to prison, right? So there's a lot of potentially very crucial decisions that can be made based on recommendations of the clinician who does these assessments, puts a report, sends it off to perhaps a judge to determine what is your pathway, right? So honesty, yeah. Ready for the questions from this chapter? Well, one question, of course, asks you about the MMPI and the house tree person, being able to talk about those assessments, be able to tell me which one is the objective, which one is the projective, and that's pretty easy to do, and describe them in detail, especially since you took the time to do the house tree person, hopefully. The other question deals with Giuseppe Constantino and his Themis. Tell me a story. Hope you enjoyed this video. Looking forward to the next chapter. Take care.